Philanthropy platform in collaboration with Kuza Biashara and UNDP Kenya. This webinar will last around 1 hour, including 30 minutes presentations and 30 minutes interactive Q&A session. If you have any questions, please write in the chat box on the left side of your screen. We will answer at the end of the presentations. So I will give floor to Suri, who is the founder of Kuza Biashara, who is one of the Innovation Challenge winner presented by SDG Philanthropy platform. So Kuza, Suri, can you start the presentation, please?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mitsui. Is Arif joining by any chance, or I go ahead?
You can go ahead. Arif will remark about the closing.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. So whenever possible, if you can just present the screen, that would be helpful. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Sriram Bharatam. I am the founder and the chief executive of a social enterprise by name Kuza Biashara. Kuza in Swahili means grow, Biashara means business. So we've been in operation for the last 6 years, operating out of Africa and also now out of Asia. So what we've actually specialized in is, before I get started, I just want to give you a perspective that over the last 4 odd years, the internet and mobile penetration has been increasing. And of course, internet and mobile have changed our lives. Now, what's happening is everyone is becoming time poor, both the rich and the poor, and very little time. People are able to, their attention spans are coming down. Our research says that what used to be 12 minutes 3-4 years ago has come down to 3 minutes and going down to 2 minutes. The shift to hyper attention from deep attention, especially when you're surrounded in the digital space with WhatsApps and all of these alerts happening on the phones and devices, the attention span is going down. So what we saw as Kuza Biashara is, about 4 years ago, we saw the confluence of the smartphones happening with the content. If you see, a smartphone is always with you, it's always on, it's connected, it's got a rich user interface, can see and record, knows where you are going, knows you and knows your friends, and most interestingly can also bill you. Now with this smartphone, when you couple bite-sized, in the moment, in context video content, we believe that that's where the next biggest opportunity is. So with these findings, what we started doing is we built Kuza.one as a digital platform, and Kuza.one is a mobile-first micro-learning platform. So we created a global category we pioneered in creating a global category called micro-learning, keeping in mind the reducing attention span of the people. All the content that we do is mostly done in video format, and it is bite-sized, and we also lovingly call it snackable content. So it's a mobile-first micro-learning digital platform offering youth, women, and micro-entrepreneurs from informal communities opportunities to learn, connect, and grow. Learn, connect, and grow on their own terms and at their own convenience. We have seen over the years that most of the capacity building programs are all happening mostly at central locations, and it takes a lot of resources for people to travel all the way, leaving their livelihoods to go in and participate in those capacity building programs. So we as Kuza challenged the status quo and then said, why is it that people have to leave their livelihoods and go for trainings? Is there a better way for the learnings and the training reaching to them at their own livelihoods? And this is where the micro-learning format really helped us in terms of packaging them into smaller capsules. And then we realized that most people don't have access to internet. And even if though they have internet access, it's very expensive and they can't afford it, especially people at the bottom of the pyramid. So we came out with a micro distribution strategy wherein we actually have a small Wi-Fi router kind of a device, which we call a RUCA. RUCA in Swahili means leap or jump, wherein the entire digital platform is mirrored. It sits on the device, and the device travels to the communities. So visualize this, a community resource person going around with a backpack, with this RUCA device sitting in their backpack, and they also carry like 15, 20 devices, smartphones or tablets. And this backpack has a built-in electronics to charge all of them in one go in a couple of hours. So this becomes pretty much a community kit with which a resource person can go into the communities, and they can set up a Wi-Fi network, which is a local area network in a range of 30, 40 meters. And anyone who has access to smartphone, or they can borrow a smartphone from this kit and can connect to that, and they get the same seamless experience as they would otherwise get on internet. So we realized that the moment we introduced the micro distribution kits, we started democratizing access. That is, almost everyone started getting access to this digital content, the digital learning platform, all of that for free. So pretty much the access became democratized. And then we also introduced micro mentoring into this platform. Natalia, I'm not able to see the screen. Is there a technical challenge in presenting the screen?
We are able to see the screen. I think it should be fine.
Oh, I see. Okay. I'm not able to see the screen, so maybe I can just keep sharing. So
I can see it from long distance, so we're good.
Okay, thanks, Arif. So the communities that Kuza have been working with are pretty much smallholder farmers, construction workers, refugees, community health workers, women and youth groups at large. So mostly the informal communities who are in the range of $2 to $4 income per day. And over the last 5 odd years, we have impacted over 4 million plus people across 42 countries globally. And we have an active online community of over 1 million people. All this has happened just because of I shared with you the micro learning content, the way content has been packaged, and also the distribution gave us the possibility to scale to these numbers. And last year, when we did an exercise of mapping all our activities to the UN SDG framework, 9 out of the 17 UN SDGs have been mapped. So if you look at the way micro-learning content is helping us is short and crisp, it's fun and engaging, it's easy to apply. I mean, whatever you learn, you can immediately go back and apply in the day-to-day life. And of course, it's mobile-friendly. And the micro-distribution platform helps access the content on the move. We also call it in the bush. Without access to internet, without access to electricity, you're still able to access the content seamlessly. And of course, on your own terms and at your own convenience. So we have seen, I'm sure you are able to see this screen here, this slide number 9, where you can see the small device in the bottom right side and also a backpack unit. So that's the unit where we house this and take it and move it forward. And as a social enterprise, what we said is we built in the entire technology framework and architecture. And now we are working with like-minded partners, developmental partners, and also the foundations of corporates to see how we can take this to scale across different programs that we are running. So this is a small background of where Kuza is coming from and what we've been able to do. And fortunately, last year, as part of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, at the SDG Challenge by the Philanthropy Platform, we won the Innovation Challenge, and we ended building up and customizing our entire platform for early childhood development. So as you all know, early childhood is a period from birth to 8 years, and which is a key to a full and productive life of a child. And it focuses on developing a child's physical and motor skills, cognitive and learning skills, socio-emotional growth, spiritual and moral development. And the first 1,000 days of a child's birth are the most critical phase where all the neurons and the pathways get formed. So what we've done is, as part of this innovation challenge, we've taken different segments. That's infant or a baby, that's 0 to 1 year, toddler 1 to 3 years, preschool that's 3 to 5 years, and a primary school 5 to 8 years. We've segmented this and classified the content into these categories and then put it all in a micro-learning format. To just set the context of Kenya, as what we've understood and known is 28% is the prevalence of stunting in Kenya's urban population on an average. 40% of the Nairobi's total population is living in the informal settlements, and the prevalence of stunting in these settlements is to the tune of about 60%. Maternal and child mortality rates are as high as 50%. And national government efforts in pre-primary education starts only at the age of 4.5 years. And 0 to 3 year range, as I said, the first 1,000 days is actually where most of the neurons and pathways get formed, and that's creating a critical gap in service which needs to be addressed. So then we looked at the current challenges of how this service is being delivered. So the caregivers, so the ECD caregiver challenges, I mean, the most of these caregivers are fundamentally community health workers or volunteers or women in the family who are actually taking care of the child. If you look at the challenges, the ECD teachers, of course, ECD as a science has been now being implemented in most of the schools. But the challenge there is the ECD teachers have the lowest remuneration in the education system and the lowest levels of motivation for them to be able to practice ECD as a teaching thing. And the health workers and caregivers mostly, as we all know, focus only on immunization. They don't prioritize on care stimulation and nutrition, fundamentally, because they don't have adequate resources. And also, they don't know how to identify any challenges or the problems at a very early stage. And secondly, if you look at the knowledge and the skill-based challenges in Kenya, religious and cultural beliefs of both families and the caregivers actually they factor. And the ignorance about the best practices is not there. I mean, there's a very high level of ignorance and lack of access to knowledge locally in their livelihood, within their livelihood, which is also one of the biggest challenges. And of course, the blind beliefs and other cultural and traditional practices are amplifying the whole thing. Now, if you look at the system challenges, ECD is completely disconnected between education and health. If you look at it from the ministry point of view, it's neither sitting here nor as an education ministry or in the health docket. The community health workers who are the first port of call for contact for children, they lack knowledge of ECD. And all these disjointed initiatives between Education, Ministry of Education, Health, Nutrition, Water and Sanitation is where ECD is not finding a solid footing within the ministry. And all of these governments really helping the cause. And if you look at it globally, there is no single solution for ECD, and also there is a lack of evidence-based research. So this is a context, and this is where we said we got to fundamentally take this head on and be in a position to come out with a solution wherein we not only have to help people understand, get the knowledge and insights available locally and also achieve scale. So what we've done is we've taken the interventions and segmented them into 4, as in the physical and motor skills, cognitive and learning skills, socio-economic growth, and spiritual and motor development. And then there are 5 different interventions that have been planned for the child across all the age groups. That's brain development, nurturing care, nutrition, play, language and literacy, and positive guidance. So we worked closely, as KUSA, we worked closely with Aga Khan IHD and also Red River College and other partners who have been working in the ECD space, and also borrowed a lot of content from the Lancet series on ECD and built up content, customizing. First, we developed all of this in English, and now we are also developing this content in the local dialects so that it's easy for most of the informal people to be able to access and connect to it quickly. Across all of these 5 dimensions for these 4 segments of birth to 1 year, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, and 5 to 8 years. Now, if you look at the micro learning side of it, so age-wise classification is done. We just put in some screenshots of snippets of how the content is packaged, how it looks like. And as I said, all the 5 dimensions across the nurturing care content is packaged for each of these age classification. And then most of the content is packaged in 2 to 3 minute video capsules, which is all available through the smartphones with built-in quizzes, which would help do summative and formative assessments on understanding. So the methodology that we follow here is that in the beginning of, before someone accesses this content, they go through a small quiz based on which we understand their level of understanding. And accordingly, the content starts popping up for them based on their level of understanding of the fundamental concepts. It's all done through using the digital platform. Now, if you look at the micro distribution side of it, now this is where we've pioneered and built up a blended learning methodology. Now, these backpacks are the ones who move around with the facilitator or a community outreach person. And then we mobilize smaller groups in the range of 15 to 20, 20 being an optimal size. And we go through this blended learning methodology. Now, what happens here is the community outreach and engagement model is, the way we do this is the program implementation partner, which we are working with many of the international and the local NGOs and the community-based organizations. They send a resource person who work in collaboration with the public sector agencies to disseminate and screen the locally tailored micro-learning video content targeting caregivers and families. So our target here is the caregivers and the families. Now, this approach of what we have observed in not only this program and also based on other programs that we have been doing, at least gives 10 times, it's 10 times more effective on a cost per adoption basis than a conventional approach, with a 7-fold increase in the rate of behavior change. One of the things that we very subtly do as part of this digital platform and the digital intervention is we track and we track all the interactions that are happening on the platform, and through the monitoring and evaluation side of the platform, actually start seeing the behavior change. And based on the behavior change and based on the way the learners are responding, we actually start improvising the content. So the way this happens is in the blended learning methodology is the content gets screened, which is where we set the context. And then using the micro learning video content is how we do the ice breaking amongst the participants, create a level of trust and respect amongst themselves so that they open up and then start interacting without any inhibitions in a safe environment. And that's when, post that is when they are given that, and the facilitator screens the content. And that's when everybody is aligned on the specific topic of discussion for that particular day. And post that is when we encourage them to borrow the devices, access using their own smartphones, the digital content, and go through an experiential learning at their own convenience. So the reason why we do this too is to, one, to bring in the culture of learning using this methodology. And the second is to help them go through this process of self-discovery and learning. And most of them who have access to smartphones can download this content on their devices and can carry it with them to access at their own convenience. Now, in addition to this, we've also introduced something called a micro mentoring. So the beauty of this feature is that as a learner is going through the learning on at their own convenience, micro mentoring is done one-on-one using the digital platform. There is an on-demand contextual mentorship that's built into it. So this all happens as an in-app mentoring. And we have seen most people, like you see in the physical classrooms, even in the digital platform, are not very comfortable putting up their hand or, tagging their identity to the questions that they're asking. So initially, a couple of years ago, when we introduced this feature, we realized that not many people were forthcoming in terms of asking questions and participating. So then we made it anonymous. The moment we made it anonymous is when we saw a huge change, a behavior change, and people started actively participating. You can see in the third screen where the query is put and the subject matter experts would actually respond back to that. Again, both of them remain anonymous. And there's also a lot of peer-to-peer mentoring that happens here. So the blended learning methodology, as you can see in the next slide, is all this happens in about 10 different steps, wherein every session we've introduced only one simple concept, and we ensure that the participants understand all of them and they walk away as a key take-home value with something that they can go back and apply immediately in their day-to-day life. Now, the next few sections are the ones that what we done is also like we came out with some flashcards as part of the blended learning methodology. And these flashcards and posters are the ones that we usually showcase there. And some of them also love carrying these flashcards for a quick reference. And the similar thing, interactivity and gamification is all done using the mobile platform. So if you see in the screen, there's a social and emotional development, and especially for the babies from the birth, the first 2 months, 6 months, 8 months, and 12 months, what are the different stages in which the babies go through, and what are the key symptoms that you can observe? We're all put in through these infographics. These are used as flashcards, and the same thing also happens through interactive exercises on their smartphones. So this kind of content actually helps them to interact intuitively, learn from each other, open up conversations, and because of the smaller groups, they tend to interact with each other and then collaborate and learn and take it from there. So the same thing we have done for physical development, language development, and also for cognitive development. So in a nutshell, if to summarize the core innovation, the key highlights of the solution are, number one, there's a very strong message recall and comprehension that happens when people go through this kind of learning methodology. Number two is the community members remember the key messages because the way it is kind of communicated, the way they pick it up and the way they practice. So the retention levels are extremely high. And the third is the local dialect. So because we are also using not only English, but also a lot of local dialects, and the examples are also extremely local, that actually provides a kind of familiarity to the viewers. And the screening of the learning videos through mediated video screenings at community forums is what really kind of brings out whatever are those inhibitions, and they open up and then start doing the conversations. And the fifth one being the facilitators and the community resource people would engage in productive discussions to reinforce the understanding of a practice. And most often we have seen that a lot is learned by interaction, and people when they open up and then start sharing, that's when they learn that, oh, I've been following this because my sister told me this, or my mother taught me this, or I observed and picked it up. And so a lot of fundamental reinforcement happens when they go through this kind of collaborative session. And also the small groups create an informal and intimate, plus a safe and a trusted environment enabling active conversations leading to positive behavior change, which is extremely, extremely important. And they are now able to go back and articulate their experiences and similar stories as part of the community outreach and their knowledge sharing to others. And most importantly, the ability to screen the learning videos more than once via the offline digital kits on demand and in the context of conversations of the caregivers and families is also something which they don't necessarily need to have a lot of resources to be able to access this. And also this is how we are able to bridge the gap of the knowledge and skills which are not there available within the country and also at a local and a community level.
Hello. It looks like we are running into a technical issue here. Sri, we cannot hear you somehow.
Yes, Natalia, I can't hear Sri any longer either.
Yes. Well, I think there was a technical issue, but luckily we've got to the end of the presentation. I would like to thank Sri for a very interesting presentation. And now we would like to give a floor to Arif Neki, who is our country coordinator for SDG Philanthropy Platform in Kenya, to provide some remarks on the Innovation Challenge and the linkages to the SDGs and what was the initial vision for running this Innovation Challenge and achieving the results, advancing the early childhood development agenda in Kenya. Please, Arif, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, folks, and thank you for taking the time to log into this very interesting subject. As Natalia mentioned, my name is Arif Neki. I coordinate the SDG philanthropy platform in Kenya. This is based at the UN Resident Coordinator's Office in the United Nations complex in Gigiri, Nairobi. The office is responsible for coordinating about 21 UN agencies, including 2 global head offices, in one UN effort within Kenya, working to strengthen the government's aspirations around Vision 2030 and the implementation of SDGs. And one of the elements we are very interested in is supporting some of the manpower and capacity building support around the government's aspirations, also on the Big Four agenda, and unlocking philanthropic and private capital to complement public capital in driving our targets and aspirations over the next 5 years. One of the reasons we did this ECD Innovation Award was to really look at, a paradigm shift in terms of moving forward in looking at a systems-based approach, looking at scalable approaches, and looking at how one might move from the usual tendency to work in small pilots and in what I call puffs of excellence in the sea of deprivation, to really look at how one might look at new technology, look at innovations, and really harness Kenya's, shall I say, prowess in tech and in really developing this whole ecosystem around the Silicon Savannah to drive real change on the ground. So moving from the conceptual and the technological to real impacts on the ground. We know that over 30% of Kenyans live below the poverty line, notwithstanding that we're a middle-income country. So how do we really create a sense of urgency, and how do we harness technology in a way that creates social impacts? How do we attract private sector on the basis of enlightened self-interest to open up markets in Kenya and beyond, but simultaneously hit and accelerate SDG impacts? And so this is really about creating shared value. This is about creating blended finance models and bringing in philanthropy and private capital to complement public capital to drive these types of change processes. But so it was very exciting and important for us to bring in Stanford University to develop a workshop for about 35 stakeholders, ranging from government, the Office of the President, right down to counties, working with UN agencies, working with NGOs, working with a number of impact investors and venture philanthropists to try and put our heads together around the what I might call the fracture points between the new 6 domains that are being launched around the nurturing care framework, looking at the critical first 1,000 days of the most accelerated brain development that equips a child not only for lifelong learning, but also for social and economic engagement. And how do we equip a generation of children that can have the best opportunity to optimize and maximize their capacity and their talent? And so these types of innovations can have really exciting, far-reaching implications. We were delighted with the work that KUZA has been able to produce out of this award. And we have some very exciting opportunities also, as we've created an ECD Action Network group in Kenya that brings in parts of thematic areas that hitherto don't traditionally work in ECD, including some major private sector players, bringing in some ECD financiers, bringing in, of course, academia and research, practitioners on the ground, but also bringing in various ministries that would be related to this subject. Because you're talking about health, you're talking about sanitation, you're talking about water, you're talking about cognitive stimulation, child protection, and all of these need to sort of come together in that first 1,000 days, but they tend to be fragmented in various ministries. They tend to be fragmented between national and local government. They tend to be fragmented even in private institutions, between specialist institutions and sort of more broader cross-cutting operators. So how do we bring this to bear in a focused way for young people, particularly in remote, vulnerable parts of Kenya? So that really was our motivation. to fund and drive this innovation award. And so we're delighted that this has happened, and the SDG philanthropy platform is now also leading the charge on supporting and driving more interesting research and leveraging the role of ECD across the Big Four agenda that President Kenyatta announced recently as his final legacy for the second and final term of office. And when you look at the Big Four agenda, we're talking about universal health care, and particularly our focus being primary health care. You're looking at food and nutrition security. You're talking about manufacturing and skills training and human capacity development. And you're talking about low-cost housing. So when you look at early childhood development, there tends to be a fairly cross-cutting enabler here, in our opinion, to drive many of these aspirations in the long term. And if one can catch children at the right point in the right time, we have an opportunity to really optimize and maximize their intellectual and economic and social potential. So let me stop there. We will share with you our details. Offline, if there are specific conversations, we're happy to have conversations for those of you who are locally based in Kenya, and for those of you who want to have Skype calls with us, we're happy to speak to you as well. Let me stop there and perhaps allow some time for question and answer discussion. But before I move forward, I would like to thank Sri and Kuza for all the excellent work that you've put together. We're delighted that many of our global partners, including the Conrad N. Hilton Foundation, the Aga Khan University Institute of Human Development, Red River College, and a number of ECD experts, including UNICEF and others, have been interested and intrigued by this innovation, and hopefully it could be something that can create a groundswell of sort of interest and attraction towards the sector as well. We're also talking about ECD financing and alternative modalities of blended finance, and then that is a subject that will be discussed at a forthcoming ECD national conference that we're supporting the Kenya ECD network to host later in July at Kenyatta University. Thank you very much, and let me stop here.
Thank you so much, Arif. I saw Suri comes back. So Suri, do you have any closing remarks? I would like to give a floor to you.
Yeah, thank you. So thanks Arif for chipping in. So I think Arif, as you summarized, to just a tip of the iceberg, and the opportunity that we all have is to see how we can challenge the status quo, and with the resources that we have, how we can make a difference. And we at Kuza are very excited about the small dent that we are able to make a difference, and then looking forward to working closely with other like-minded partners to see how we can scale this beyond East Africa, and then see how we can make it a global innovation. So with that, let me stop here and see if there are any questions that we can take. I'm happy to clarify.
Thank you so much, Suri. So we have one question from Austin. So I'd like to give a floor to Austin to speak up about his question perspective. So Austin, can you talk?
Yes, thank you very much. This is Austin from Living Goods. And my question was really on the technology is amazing. Eh? So my question was, how best do you partner with non-state actors to leverage on this technology?
Okay, maybe I can go. Austin?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. Thanks for your positive comment. So I think where we are right now, as I said in the beginning of this conversation, that we are pretty new to the sector. We don't claim to be experts in ECD. We are good in taming the technology, and we are good in solving the problems at the grassroots level. So I guess there is an opportunity for us to work together and then see how each of us can bring our respective expertise to the table, and then see how we can scale this up. So the answer to your question is, we are all open to see how we can put our heads together and scale this up.
Okay, thank you very much, and I hope Living Goods will be able to reach out to see how best you can partner on this.
Yeah, thanks, Austin.
Sri, thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. This is Natalia speaking. I also have a question. I would like to ask you about the particular challenges that you faced while implementing this innovation challenge. The project is very exciting. There are so many good things happening, but I'm sure you also faced some challenges. And could you please tell us more about it and how you worked to overcome them?
Yeah, thanks, Natalia. So, I mean, one of the key challenges for us is not understanding the domain. And to tell you the truth, I heard about ECD only about a year ago, personally. I'm ashamed to say this, but at least I heard it. And from the time I heard it, we've been discussing internally within our team to see how can we build up this expertise and how we can grow. And thanks to Aga Khan University, Red River College, and other partners who came on board, who helped us really to fast track our learning. Our learning curve has been very steep. And that's, I mean, the knowledge gap is one of the key challenges. But where we are today, we've crossed quite a bit of distance, and we are now able to have serious conversations with ECD experts. So that's one. And the second is the sector itself seems to be quite wide. And where we are right now, we really don't know how to steer this forward. As much as there is a great innovation, and we've already seen some good positive signs of how this whole thing can make a difference, but it's also about the pathways of how do we go to market. And for us at KUSA, we are very excited about the possibilities of scale. So I guess if there is one forum, and EGDAN Forum is definitely the ECD Action Network in Kenya is definitely a great place to start. And thanks to Arif Neki, we've been invited into that, and that really helped us a lot to understand all the key stakeholders. But definitely that was one of the challenges to figure out how do we go to market and how do we do it at scale. So fundamentally those two. And the third one really is there seem to be a lot of players in the space. And if only we can all put our heads together, put our resources together, and then see how we can have one aligned agenda to work towards the impact, I think that would be a great place to start.